page 195, item 10.5, submission on inquiry into community-led retreat and adaptation funding. I just want to make a little note here that the recommendation in one should read submission on. I think the word submission is missing from that. Councillor Coxhead.
I noticed that this letter, this submission isn't dated. Has this already been sent?
I believe it has.
So we hadn't workshopped this? No, we had it in executive forum, we didn't workshop it.
We did. Well, you provided comments and we took account of those.
Yeah, that was at executive forum.
Actually, no, we did workshop it. We did workshop it, that's right. And then you sent an email subsequently. Okay. Councillor Joyce.
So on page 200 of the agenda, there's a suggestion of a novel funding and financing solution for managed retreat. When was that workshopped with councillors, please? Okay,
so firstly, doing submissions like this is always a tricky one with timing, and that is an idea that I had, and I subsequently socialised it with councillors after another meeting or workshop, and the majority of councillors were there, and it was favourably received.
So just to clarify, we had a workshop. This idea did not go before the workshop, and now it's gone into a submission without going back to council.
Well, this is the difficulty we have. I mean, Councillor Coxhead put an email submission in, or not submission, her views subsequently. Sometimes this happens. It's much better I agree, to have it all done in the workshop. Sometimes that's just not possible. And of course, that there are, how we combine the views in a workshop into a letter, that can't, you're not going to have two workshops on this. It's just not going to be feasible.
So this was covered in an informal discussion amongst a few councillors, but you didn't think to email it out to the whole council, for example, bearing in mind that it's something that's come out of the blue. I mean, I'm all for ideas, but there's something out of the blue. We have a thing called email. We seem loath to use it.
Well, we're not going to
socialise ideas.
We don't debate stuff by email. That's a really bad way of doing stuff. But Rachel, did you want to come in there?
I just wanted to add that it was workshopped on the 3rd of October as part of a suite of other workshop items. It is in your Stella, and I can see it there. The elected members who attended on that day, bearing in mind that there were 43 questions and there wasn't the time nor energy, respectfully, to go through all 43 questions at that time. Elected members were invited to, beyond the workshop, to share their ideas, and that is what happened with 2 of our elected members.
I don't want to turn this into a debate, but if we were sharing our ideas, perhaps the Mayor could have shared this idea as well.
Well, I did. But if you're not here, then that kind of...
I'm sorry, but I don't know. When you're having an informal thing over lunch, I don't know what you're going to discuss, because how do I know?
The question for me was whether I mentioned it at all, because this is gathering people's views from a workshop with staff collating it into a letter, into a submission, and then how you put that together. And I felt that the idea was sufficiently different to socialise it, but that was something I did as a helpful thing, rather than as trying to have some extra workshop, which was never going to be able to happen. I'm going to go to Councillor Granger and then Councillor Murray Benge.
With respect to the discussions, it's not council policy. It's a submission that's going into government. It's probably going to get thrown into the bin anyway. So I don't know why we're spending so much time getting titchy about whether something was discussed or not.
Thank you, Councillor Granger. I can't agree. Councillor Murray Benge.
I'm titchy, and I read this and I thought, here we are, we've had areas in low lying area around Kadikadi where we know that if we put a health requirement on it, close it down, government would be interested in helping. But we don't, because we work with the community, and we do need to transfer people back from where they are at the present time. And you absolutely have to have government support for that, because we can't afford to do it on our own. So in that regard, it waffles around, to be honest, sir, but it's not clean and clear enough for me, and I just think it's one of those things where we'll drift on, and unless we have, for the great majority of people, it's not an issue. And so, but for where we have problems and we need to act now, rather than in 10, 100 years' time, they'll be underwater by then. And so I feel that this doesn't go far enough. It was an opportunity to crack the government round the ears and tell them, I've got to watch my language, they've got to tell them that in fact we need support at the right time, and that is now and not 100 years hence. Just saying, sir.
Thank you for your views, Councillor Maori Benj. I'm sure the new government will consider all the submissions carefully. Are there any other questions on this? No? Okay, I'll look for a mover and seconder, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sole on Zoom.
Yes, sir. I just look at this one as well as being a bit of a worry. I mean, the implications and so on. I like ideas that come from out of nowhere. To be honest, they at times will often lead to a gem of something. So I don't have an issue with that. I do have perhaps an issue when I work through some of it for people in my ward, and how it might work. But that's not what we're talking about today. But the other thing, there's a whole pile of these things now going out that we don't see. And previously, we've had, in just about every occasion, an opportunity to view it before it was sent out and make any comment. And maybe this one is, again, one that could have stopped this discussion now if it had come out earlier. If it had just been sent out, this is what we have decided to forward as a submission. Any further comments just would be helpful.
Okay, we, as I said, we did workshop this. We invited further comments, but at some point you've just got to say this is the views we've received and this is how we've incorporated them, rather than go round in circles re-workshopping it again, because there simply isn't the time in these situations. I've had a number of situations just recently where I've had to receive a submission and go through it the same day, and it's been tough, I can tell you. So that's just sometimes how it works. But I'll look for a move. So with that question, we're out of questions now. So I'll ask for a mover and seconder. Councillor Crawford, maybe. Councillor Granger, second. I'll put them. Any debates? Councillor Joyce.
I'm sorry, but I don't agree with this approach. I understand the pressures of time, and I also like ideas. But frankly, what's here on number 5 is basically nationalisation of people's land without compensation, right? You're talking about turning people's land from freehold to leasehold with no compensation. Now that's trampling on property rights. And I appreciate it's an idea, but it's an idea that needed to be properly considered before it went out on council letterhead. This is a council submission. If you wanted to put a private submission in as yourself, as the mayor, absolutely no problem with it, but this is going out from us. Who's going to tell the people of Waihi Beach and Makatu and Te Puna and Pukahina that we support a government actually taking their land off them, their freehold title off them, and replacing it with leasehold? You know, that's actually quite a radical idea. And it's one that should not be tossed off lightly. You know, that's what Venezuela does. That's what Cuba does. Take away people's land rights without compensation. The idea that the values would sink slowly over the 99 years is speculation. I mean, once you've declared land to be lost, the value will actually drop reasonably quickly, potentially. But certainly we should have some evidence one way or the other before we start suggesting it to government. You know, we have a problem. These submissions are workshopped, but the information that goes into the final version is quite often quite different to what we workshop. I realise there's issues of time, but we have electronic means of communication. You know, if you're asking councillors to submit ideas by email, then I can't see why the mayor should have different rules.
Because I have delegated authority. That is the reason why.
And perhaps we need to remove the delegated authority. Because frankly, this is saying to people in Waihi Beach, the government should take your freehold title away. This is saying to people in Makatu, the government should take your freehold title away. You know, you give an example of London with no details. I'm told, and I don't know if it's true because I haven't had time to check, that the land in London was actually wasteland that they did this to. We've got many, many examples of leasehold land in New Zealand. You know, the Cornwall Park Trust Board has famously, you know, caused pain and suffering to people in Auckland from leasehold land. We've had the issues in Taranaki, where I'm from, where, you know, leasehold land has been mishandled. And the tangata whenua suffered from that. So, yeah, I really like ideas, and this is a big issue, and I don't have an answer, and no one does. But we just need to be sure that we're not, by accident, suggesting that our people, particularly in Waihi Beach and Makatu, should just have their freehold title converted to leasehold, and that would be a massive loss in value for people. You know, that's a big question that should be discussed properly before a submission goes in. So I'm sorry, I cannot support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. I have Councillor Coxhead, please.
I think I've made it reasonably clear that I have huge concerns about the report produced by the Working Party. I've made no secret of that. I actually have 3 pages of notes subsequent to this, and I appreciate there's an awful lot of work gone into this. I'll focus my response to part 5 regarding the lease as well. This is an area I have reasonable experience in, freehold versus leasehold, and I would have been happy to have had input into this. The problem with this, I agree with what Councillor Joyce has had to say about compulsory acquisition with actually no compensation, actually a peppercorn lease in exchange. Effectively, by doing that, it is actually reducing the value of the land to pretty much zero because it's a compulsory situation. In a normal situation with a normal freehold and a normal, if you compared 2 properties exactly the same, one's leasehold, one's freehold, you would probably find that the leasehold was 50% land value of the freehold for the very reason of it being a lease, and that's a normal lease. Now, there's a point made in here about how the bank would still lend money on it and would lend it for 50 years. Well, that's again on a normal lease. The bank would lend money to the last 30 years of the term of the lease on a normal lease. Well, they would only lend 25 years, sorry, not 30. However, in this situation, it talks about, so let's use an example. So you've got $1 million property, let's say at the beach, and suddenly it's decided it's going to be mandatorily acquired by the council or whoever, and you have an $800,000 mortgage on that property. Now, suddenly your property value has reduced to, let's say, best part, probably the value of the house itself, not the land. The land would have no value at that point, presumably. So then you have an $800,000 mortgage you're paying for a property that may be worth maybe $250,000 just because of the house. And that may be okay with the bank as long as that loan didn't default. However, if it did default, suddenly the bank's got a property that they have to move a house off, the land's worth nothing, no one's going to buy it in a mortgagee sales situation. So it's essentially the security has been reduced to zero. There is no way of recouping that loss from the bank. And the point that's missed in here is the fact that the bank would never agree to the property being leasehold anyway, because at the end of the day, with a mortgage, the bank owns the property with you. So these are the points I'm concerned about. To Councillor Granger's point, it's just a submission, and what's the problem? Well, for me, it's on behalf of the council of which I'm an elected member, and I have more feedback to give on this, and I will be providing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhead. Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, and reflecting on this, the issue is around wellbeing and safety that this mandatory retreat is about. In my view, we're trading certain misery by increased costs of owning land increased cost to everyone, increasing the cost of living, that is near certain that will be the outcome of that. We're trading that against an uncertain future where we don't know what those costs will be. So I would prefer to be in the camp of dealing with certainty rather than uncertainty, and let market forces play its way out. So I'm not happy with this submission, so I would prefer my name's not attached to it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Councillor Bench.
I often talk about the cost of housing, but the number one issue with it is the cost of the land. And so following on from Councillor Coxhead, the house has got limited value, but the land is really expensive in this area. So it's a serious issue that nobody is going to agree with in the community. And they don't look 100 years ahead. They look at 10 years at the most. And for all those young people who want to own a home, then they haven't got a hope in hell unless of actually doing something, unless we change a lot of systems in this country. So, but listening to the debate, sir, one of the things that I think is really important, that before any submission goes to Wellington under your name, that it's circulated to councillors by email 2 days before it goes, so you've got a chance to actually have an opinion and finalise the submission with the confidence of all your councillors. That's really quite important, because it's not fair to you to have you in a position where in fact the councillors are feeling that they've got something to say and nowhere to say it except to you. So it puts us, everybody, in a very difficult position. So I feel for the council itself. My advice is we have a further recommendation that in the future all submissions be circulated to councillors before they actually go to Wellington, before you get the final sign-off. In fairness to you, we've got to protect you as well as the council itself, and I think that's really important that we do that.
I'll just comment on that. I don't think that is... I mean, one could physically circulate it before it goes to Wellington, but there's no facility to be able to incorporate those comments. That is the problem. So what would happen is that it would get circulated to councillors, maybe hours, maybe a day before it goes to Wellington. You'd barely have time to read it. Then it has to go through the work of collating, and you certainly wouldn't, you know, what if you said you wanted something and you wanted something else? You can't resolve that. And that is my role as mayor, as leader of this council, to make that call. And, you know, I get that you're not always happy with that, and these processes are not always ideal. But mostly, and with this submission in particular, we workshopped it and we asked for your opinions, and we received them and we incorporated them as much as we could. But with that, I'm going to go to, actually, Councillor Sole. Sole was next.
Yes, well, it was workshop, but in particular, the basic principle in 5 there wasn't, and that's really the case, and it's quite radical. May have great benefits, but what I see of it so far, and when I analysed it, it is not a benefit to us. I don't like the idea that our council is attached to such an idea without being able to workshop it, understand its implications, and I just feel that was quite dangerous in many ways. It's just something I'm not comfortable with at all. The rest of it, sure, we basically had a workshop, but that was something from out of blue sky somewhere, and that isn't so comfortable for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sole. Perhaps I should just explain where this where I'm going with this, because there's a few misconceptions that have come up. So I would like to say, first of all, I did get the comfort from the majority of councillors about this idea. So I did explain it. It wasn't ideal. There were timing issues, obviously, but I did get the majority of councillors saying, we're happy with this. To the actual point, though, Climate change is tough. There are no good solutions, or you can't win all round on this one. Managed retreat is confiscation of land, and it won't be without full compensation. This was a way of making it a more equitable outcome with certainty, long-term certainty. It is also, as Maori said, just an idea. It is a suggestion to government. This is not something we're going to implement on our own without consultation. This is, as Maori said, it's probably going in the bin. But I think it's an idea that I've been mulling over for some time actually, and it just wasn't appropriate in the workshop to just spell it all out. That's not how the workshop was going. But I think this is a fair way of doing it, where the point with managed retreat is we've got to turn valuable houses on the coast to houses with zero value. And how do you do that, and when, and who pays? And this one, for me, felt like a fair way of doing it with long-term certainty. So I hope you appreciate it's just an idea. But I'll let Murray speak now.
Thank you. Yes, this is a submission to an inquiry. It's not a submission on a bill. It isn't a government idea. It's a submission into an inquiry on climate adaptation. And some of their ideas and that came out in their paper were pretty horrendous. If people with a batch get zero, well, that's hardly a good idea. So float other ideas. It's another idea, and if somebody in Wellington thought it had merit, then I'm sure there's a heck of a lot of smarter minds than ours down there who work out all the wrinkles with mortgages and banks and all the other things that if they thought it had merit and thought it had legs and could run. So I don't know that we need to get so frustrated about the fact that the Mayor popped in another thought at the last minute without talking to everybody about it. It's just an idea. It's going to Wellington with a whole bunch of other ideas from other councils and private people. It's going to go into a big grinder and something will get spat out the end. And what that is, we have no idea. But this is a submission from us with, hey, what about thinking about this? Does it work? Can it fly?
Thank you. Would you like your right to reply, Councillor Crawford? Yep.
Yeah, look, I know it's a very difficult subject and appreciate what those are saying in regards to the homeowners, but it's a reality that we have to face. And, man, I think, I've been thinking about this, about people I know who own properties, very expensive properties, and what the implications will be like for them in the future if we, maybe not in our lifetime, but, preparing for the future. About, that they could be facing where they're on their own. So to actually have an idea like this, is, I see it more a positive idea than a negative. And the thing about equity and about who gets the right amount, that's another conversation to be worked out if it gets adopted. But yeah, just want to back you, James, and recognise sometimes the position you're put into. Yeah, that's all I want to say to that.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. So I shall now put the motion, which is, sorry? You want a division on receiving the report? Okay. Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Okay. Okay. Well, okay, yeah, we can do that. So okay. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Unfortunately not. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry, can you just get them up?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, you got it. And those against, please raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that all right?
Yeah, because we've got 10 because Anne's away.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love casting votes. Yeah, no, I will be voting in favour, but for goodness sake, this is receiving a report. I understand the issues here, but this is receiving a report and noting we've sent it, basically. So, vote in favour. Carried. Thank you.
Can I ask what the protocol would be if the vote went against it and you can't receive a report?
Well, that's,
I would have moved a subsequent motion that we send a letter to the Ministry of Environment withdrawing our submission.
okay. It sounded like commissioner stuff to me, but anyway, okay. Item 10.6, page 2.